The Syntax of Things by Arisha. Chapter 8. Wisdom. Discoveries. Harry expected to find the most bizarre things in Snape's house. He expected bats and rats, haunted items, ghosts, rotten food, broken windows, and filthy blankets. He expected spiders, bad smells, cracked and sunken floorboards, and all sorts of books and potions. He expected all of these, and he hadn't been entirely wrong. So, when he fumbled through Snape's closet, he expected to find Death Eater cloaks, spare wands or poison jars, or even knives and daggers. What he didn't expect, though, was a stack of porn magazines. And a big stack it was. He found them in a dusty carton box, and he took them out dumbstruck. Shocking wasn't exactly the right word. It was unbelievable. None of them seemed to belong to Snape. The publication dates indicated they were at least 3 decades old. In the same box, numerous empty cigarette packs were rotting, and a single piece of broken glass was placed on top. Harry didn't know what to make of it. He assumed it all must have belonged to Snape's father. Harry spread the magazines on the floor, carefully avoiding touching them too much. He flipped open the first one with his wand and came face to face with a picture of a naked blonde woman with long curly hair and large breasts. She was straddling a motorbike, the wind pushing her hair back and revealing her firm body. No way, Harry muttered to himself. If only he could tell Ron about this. He was never going to believe Snape kept porn in his house. Harry had trouble coping with the news at the moment, too. On the next page, the same woman was fondling her breasts with both hands. Harry closed the magazine, somewhat embarrassed. He checked the clock. Snape was going to be back any time now. He had to hurry up. He quickly stored the magazines back in place and was ready to leave, his hand clutching the doorknob on the way out of Snape's bedroom. Then, changing his mind, he ran back and took one of the issues with him. He rolled it up and shoved it under his shirt before disappearing to his room. There were too many magazines there for Snape to notice anyway, at least he hoped so. Snape was back earlier than expected, and Harry silently thanked his luck for not making a fool out of it. They ate soup in silence, and Harry tried to ignore the filthy glares Snape was granting him with. When Snape poured himself a glass of water and slammed the glass loudly on the table, Harry looked up. You're angry. Mind your business, Potter. I thought you'd tell me how it went. But Dumbledore, we were discussing work. Keep your nose out of it. You weren't discussing work. You were discussing me, Harry said confidently. I bet you were telling him how I drive you mad with my poor progress, and that you don't want me here, and that I'm stupid. We both know you hate me. There's no need to pretend. He quickly added in a more restrained tone, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to, you know. You don't have to. You can always run away when I'm not looking. I'll tell it was an accident. The line was delivered with Snape's familiar bitterness, but it somehow managed to creep deeper than that. It's better here, Harry conceded. It occurred to him that this shouldn't have come out. Why had it? He filled his mouth with a spoonful of the bland soup, and only when he gulped it down did he realize that he was tense. I mean, at least here I do learn something when I'm not locked in my room. I'm not locking you, Snape spat. Stupid. I know. And you're not learning. Well, I suck at potions and occlumency, the only 2 subjects I've been taught exclusively by you. That actually means something. It means, Snape snarled, that you have no desire to learn whatsoever. Shielding the mind presupposes to have one in the first place. Yeah, insulting your students isn't exactly the way to go. They've been looking for a new mascot at Zonkos, by the way. Perhaps you should consider a career change. With great satisfaction, Harry imagined Snape dressed in red trousers and matching suspenders, selling love potions and jelly beans. I might as well, Snape hissed. And speaking of jobs, I hear the dream is to become an Auror now, is it not? Harry shrugged his shoulders. I think so. You think so? All this thirst for fame, it can't simply let you leave the spotlight. Snape dipped his spoon into his bowl so brutally it was almost tipped over. You'd be required to exceed expectations in potions in case it has slipped your notice. Do you deem this a realistic goal? Yes, Harry said a little too fast, although he didn't fully believe it. No, Snape retorted. Forget the Aurors. Live up to your arrogance and continue down the celebrity path. Become an actor, a dancer, a poster boy. A pause. But I forgot. You're short. Damn Snape for knowing exactly how to detect his insecurities. Some women prefer short men. he said defensively. "And how many women have preferred you so far, pray tell?" Snape arched a brow, and Harry felt the heat rising up to his face. His stare dropped to his bowl. "I thought so." Harry bit his tongue and let a bitter retort travel back down his throat. He could ask Snape how many women had preferred him. He bet the answer was none. Then again, it was a risk he might be sober to take, considering the possibilities of Snape having dated his mum. But he couldn't let his mind go through that again. It was pure torment. What could his mum have possibly seen in Snape that'd make her find him any attractive at all? Harry watched him as he brought a napkin to his face and carefully wiped his thin lips. He wasn't handsome. His nose was large, his skin was pale, his hands... Well, he didn't have ugly hands, quite the opposite. His fingers were long, with short and clean nails, and when he didn't wear his coat, it was quite obvious that he had firm forearms, too. Harry wondered if the dark mark was still there. It had to be, he thought. He was also taller than Harry would ever be, and he had that way of just making people notice him. Sometimes it was hard to tell if he was snobbish and evil, as everyone thought, or if he was just not a happy person. Harry knew that being unhappy could make someone seem malicious and aggressive, even if the only thing they wanted was to be left alone. He knew that. He learned it when Ron and Hermione were pushing matters too much, or when Dumbledore did, or Remus, or everybody. He remembered how Dumbledore had told him that his mother could always see the beauty in others. That she was kind, as Sirius and Remus would agree. What had she seen in Snape that Harry couldn't? Harry had never come to terms with him. He never liked him, or trusted him, or even saw any reason to respect him. But then again, he had never really tried to. Their hatred had always been mutual, and it wasn't like Snape deserved any respect. He had led Harry's parents to their death. Puzzled, Harry shook the thoughts away. It was impossible. His mom couldn't have wanted Snape, no matter how kind she might have been to him. No one could want Snape. Ever. At least he thought so. Maybe he just needed to wash his hair more often. Maybe that was it. Despite himself, he suddenly hoped that Snape did have a girlfriend somewhere, and that he was merely hiding her from Harry. It would be sad for anyone to never feel beautiful or wanted. But his train of thought had gone a bit too far, he realized. He looked up at Snape, who appeared to be lost in his own thoughts as well. "What are you thinking about?" Harry asked. He regretted it as soon as he realized that this was the kind of question he'd ask Ron, not a professor, and that he didn't most likely not want to know what Snape was thinking at all. Snape blinked, and blinked again. "The potion schedule for the upcoming year needs to be prepared." "In June!" "You weren't thinking that." Snape's chest heaved for a moment. He let a few moments pass before he responded, "Indeed. And you're not going to tell me what you were thinking about?" "No." His eyes weren't just dark. There was something inhuman about them, a depth in which one could easily drown. They glimmered with an obscure curiosity as they narrowed, and a shiver ran down Harry's spine. "What are you thinking about, Mr. Potter?" At the word "Mister," Harry's self-control shattered and was scattered to small pieces before his feet. Harry had been glaring back at Snape directly. Legitimacy, fuck. He managed a shameless grin as his last way out. "Your schedule, of course. I was wondering whether it's going to include any lesson I might get around to actually master." Snape didn't laugh. He was still peering at Harry, a long finger slowly stroking his glass of water. "I think you are tired. Perhaps you should retire." Harry nodded. "Right." He swallowed around the strange lump in his throat with difficulty. He stood up a bit quickly, left even quicker, and when he slumped on his bed, still closed, socks on, glasses thrown aside, he forced himself into a dreamless, sadly grueling sleep. "Cut like this," Snape said. He took the knife from Harry's hand and chopped the vegetables. "You need to work with sharper motions, otherwise you'll ruin them." Harry nodded, but when Snape swept over to the oven, he changed his motions and continued chopping like he did at first. "Back at Petunia's, I used to cook all the time," he said. "I know how to do it." Snape selected a couple of dishes and placed the potatoes on the cutting board. "I have some errands to run on Friday morning. Is it too much of me to ask that you stay in your room this time?" Harry stilled his hand. Surely Snape couldn't have figured out that Harry had stolen from him. "What do you mean?" Snape glared. "Biscuit crumbs everywhere." "Oh." So, he hadn't. "Are you going to see Dumbledore again?" "No." He took the vegetables from Harry and gave him the potatoes. Chop them. Not like this, Potter. You're not listening. It's better this way. Cubes instead of slices, I mean. They're less likely to burn this way, and at the same time they remain crispy. Snape gave him a peering look. If you were as imaginative in potions as you are with your stomach's desires, you might have had a chance in that Auror career after all. Harry chuckled. You can always let me take advanced potions next year, you know. I haven't lost my mind yet. Besides, things might not be as you know them next year. Harry noticed Snape's back straightening. At that, he was proud of something. Which means? Harry furrowed his brow. You'll see. Snape smirked. He put the vegetables in the pan and closed the oven door. You still hope you're going to get the defense position, don't you? Harry smashed the potato accidentally and put it aside, grimacing. Let's just say that it is more likely for me to be teaching defense instead of potions from now on. Snape leaned back to the table and crossed his hands over his chest. Uh-huh, muttered Harry. There was no chance Dumbledore was going to let Snape teach dark arts. Harry just knew it. So, where are you going on Friday, then? Harry finished his chopping and opened the oven to place the potatoes on top of the vegetables. Snape was staring at Harry with no proof of discomfort, but he didn't answer. Harry opened his mouth to say something, but couldn't find the right words. Nonsensical anger sparkled before his eyes for a moment, and then it was gone. He didn't really think he wanted Snape in danger, or anyone else, not because of Harry at least. Are you going to be all right? He asked. Snape continued staring for a long moment. Then he pushed Harry aside and turned on the oven. Snape swept over to the sink to wash his hands. I doubt it. Your cooking is dreadful, but I do hope I'll survive. He wasn't going to talk about it right then. Harry decided not to push it. And you'll survive just as well teaching potions again. Potions, spat Snape, is a delicate art, which I have seen suffer under a kind of abuse only Hogwarts students could possibly inflict. I've only endured it because I could do nothing to change it. I cannot force intelligence upon anyone, as it seems. You really hate your job, realized Harry. He washed his hands too and sat on a chair. So, why do you stay at Hogwarts? You could start your own business or something. Snape sat across Harry and placed his wand on the table. He was always carrying it with him around the house, which was a bit stressful for Harry. Besides the protection and the earnings the school provides me, I do not wish to prove myself useless. Harry tried to see the meaning behind that. Snape was a spy, at least according to Dumbledore, thought Harry with some distrust. But Voldemort was thinking that he was spying on Dumbledore instead of the other way around, which meant that if he stopped being near Dumbledore, Voldemort would have no reason to keep him in service. But that wasn't the whole truth. You're also staying to protect me. Harry wondered if he was actually expecting Snape to admit this or to deny it. Not that it'd make any difference. He should be used to people lying to him by now. The fact that Snape and Dumbledore had been hiding this from him did not bother him as much as it hurt him. He never thought of Dumbledore as disingenuous, but it seemed that he didn't regard Harry mature enough to share with him all that concerned him. Snape's wishes were probably more important than Harry's rights. Yes, even though you hate me. Harry pressed. Snape didn't consider it, but for the space of a heartbeat. It is my duty to protect you as I would do for all my students. Bollocks! So you do hate me. The way Snape looked at him unnerved him. Intently, quietly, impassively, almost as if he was trying to understand something. But you don't hate me, not really, Harry went on. You hate my father, and you want me safe for my mom's sake. So to you, I don't even exist as a real person. You're just using me to project them before you and act accordingly. There. He'd said it. He'd said it. I assure you that you have earned every last bit of my sentiments for you on your own. That's because you only see what you want to see. Harry eyed Snape's wand, and feeling reckless, he dragged it closer with a finger. He rolled it in his hand to take a better look. It was a nice wand, black and plain. Snape followed Harry's motions with his eyes warningly. You are lowering the quality level of my class. This affects downright negatively the process of the rest of the students, especially the few that do make an effort to succeed. That's not it. Try something else, Harry said. What do you think it is, Potter? that perhaps I entertain an unreasonable hatred directed especially to you. Who do you think you are? Your insolence alone is more than enough to make people sick of you." Harry nodded, his eyes round. It was the expression he was giving Ron when he wanted to communicate that he didn't take seriously a single word Ron was saying. Snape pursed his lips, leaning closer. "You're an arrogant child seeking the attention and the admiration of others. You insist on wallowing about it, pretending to be the innocent little victim, and yet deep down you enjoy every minute of it." His voice resembled a snake's hiss. "Like my father. Your father didn't carry the history you do. People fall for your supposed mythical powers, which I doubt are anything but coincidental, and you welcome their false impressions by purposely getting into trouble at every single opportunity." "Like my father." "Yes!" Snape hissed again. "You've been defying the school's rules since you first stepped foot inside, holding on to the belief that somehow they do not apply to you, or that you are too good for them." "Like my father." Harry couldn't hide his grin anymore. Snape pressed his lips together until they turned white. He pretty much looked like a chided child. "For Merlin's sake, wipe that hideous smile off your face. You haven't proved anything." Severus held up a hand. "I'm not to blame if your father's unfortunate genetics were strong." Harry rested his forehead on his hand. "You're impossible. I quit." From the corner of his eye, Harry thought he saw Snape slightly cracking his lip. He could have imagined it. "Your father wouldn't." Harry snorted at the table. Well, that was a start. He guessed so. Maybe someday he'd be able to talk to Snape without being driven mad. As his mind wandered through various similarities he had heard over the years he shared with his dad, a random question came up. "Do you like Quidditch?" Snape took his wand from him and buried it back into his sleeve. Without his coat on, it was a wonder how the wand stayed in place, so Harry guessed it was spelled to stick to his skin. "It didn't interest me much as a student. Now I can only hope Slytherin may at least win the Quidditch Cup, as the House Cup will undoubtedly going to Gryffindor for your exciting existing techniques." Harry lifted his head up. "It's only fair for Dumbledore to give us extra points with all the points you always take from us for no reason at all. We'd never win without him." "Pity. And our Quidditch team is better than yours." "Your Quidditch team is captained by a girl who looks like a man. Your head of house permits you daily training, although it is against the school rules. And your team's seeker is approximately 10 degrees of myopia." "That's only 6, protested Harry. "And I'm the best seeker my team has had in ages. At least I didn't buy my way in, you know." "My team is skillful either way. My students are capable of getting by, even when they regard their more essential studies to be the priority." "Your team sucks," said Harry. "Your beaters must be the fattest boys in Hogwarts. It's a miracle their brooms keep them up." "You will show respect to my—" "You know it's true. Students, you little spoiled audacious—" "But it's true. If you think I'm going to respect a little kid, even if I had to force you, eaters in training, to hold your tongue when you must." They were both standing now, their faces inches apart from each other. A heavy smell of smoke reached Harry's nostrils, and he wrinkled his nose, his eyes still locked with Snape's. Snape wrinkled his own nose too. "The food," Harry said. They both ran to the oven and knelt down. They opened the door, the thick black smoke attacking them at once. Harry's eyes stung, and he coughed hard. Snape brought the bottom edge of his shirt up to cover his own mouth and nose, and Harry noticed a line of dark hair starting from his navel and continuing down his trousers. He stared for a moment, and then he covered his nose with a hand as well. The smoke seemed to suck up his head like fog. "Fuck," said Harry. Snape spilled the pan cold and dragged it out. Well, it could have been worse. The vegetables had become cinder, but the potatoes were still somewhat visible. Harry turned to Snape. "See? Cubes instead of slices. They survived." And Snape laughed. He really laughed. He shoved the pan in Harry's lap. "Give it a try, then." Harry did, and after a moment he spat his mouthful back to the pan. He looked at Snape miserably, but Snape laughed again. He looked at the black, melted potatoes that had spread themselves all over the pan, and silently came to the conclusion that the pan was ruined. Snape balanced himself by placing a hand on Harry's head and got up before striding over to the living room. "Come on, we'll order pizza."